Yell it, yell it, yell it, yell it, yell it from the mountain.
Hello and welcome everyone to the final episode of 2021, episode 16. And I'm very delighted to introduce you to my guest of today. But before I do that, I would like to acknowledge the space, the territory, the land we are on today. To the traditional owners, elders, ancestors, and young leaders of these territories, we acknowledge with full respect the strength of Indigenous peoples, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, and communities who are continuing to practice culture, connecting and reconnecting to land. And we acknowledge the power and excellence of Indigenous peoples and communities fighting to protect and look after land, community, language, and lore in the face of ongoing colonial interruptions and cultural genocide. In particular, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the sovereign peoples of the many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. And we acknowledge that these lands are now the home to many diverse First Nations, the Inuit, Métis, and Métis people. So these words don't stem from me. They stem from a company called Urban Inc. And I thought they were so beautiful that I wanted to read them, and because they express a lot of acknowledgement that I feel too. And this company has a lot to do with the guest of today. So you will hear more about that. But I don't want to wait any longer and introduce you to today's guest. It is the world famous, breathtaking, life-changing Diane Roberts.
The pitchy-patchy story bits of my family's nomadic legacy begin in Grenada and St. Vincent. Alexander Delmar Roberts, my grandfather, lived an unsolved mystery. A bush healer? A member of a covert society? The Roberts line has two possible ancestral branches, the Scottish line, the Garifuna line.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. What an intro.
Before we dive deeper into it, I just want to say to everyone who's new to Yell It, my name is Benita Bailey. I'm a multidisciplinary artist who lives and works in Berlin and Toronto. My pronouns are she and her. And we are today at the Ethiopia House. And the Ethiopia House is a beautiful restaurant and cultural and community space here in downtown Toronto. And we are very thankful. So this goes up to Mohammed and his team that we can be here today. And obviously, we both chose this place for a particular reason, because your work is really closely knitted to the spaces that we're in and acknowledging the spaces that we're in. And then I'm wearing a golden blouse. I was sitting on a red sofa. I have my hair tied back, and I have some jewelry on my ears and a big chain, and even on my nose, a little septum. And can you describe yourself?
Yes. I'm wearing a black dress with plum pants, and a mud cloth, beautiful piece. And I have dreadlocks, I have red glasses, I have pink lipstick, and
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And today we obviously have the famous drink as well. So today I chose for us letzte, a beautiful company that is friends with us. Greetings go out to Alex and Noah. And we're drinking ginger, and you're drinking black cherry sparkling water. Cheers.
Cheers. Lovely.
So we have a few Yellow traditions, and one of the Yellow tradition is that you introduce yourself and say who you are and what you do and everything you want to share about your story.
Okay. Well, as you said, my name is Diane Roberts. I am a Garifuna woman. I had to hesitate there for a second because it's still an identity I'm coming to know of myself. I am Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Indigenous Caribbean. I come from two amazing lines. The Stevenson line, that's my mom's line. Dayton Stevenson was my grandfather. Sylvia Lamotte Stevenson was my grandmother. On my father's side, it was Delmar Roberts and Edna Joseph, who were my grandparents. And I speak about that and acknowledge that history and that legacy that I carry with me going forward. I am a director, a dramaturg, and a cultural animator, and the founder and director of the Arrivals Legacy Project.
In your introduction, there was already a lot to unpack. The how particular you've been in describing who you are and where you come from, which is obviously also related to your work, the Arrivals Legacy Project. When did that start? When and where did this originate, that you knew exactly where you come from, where your ancestors are? Did you have easy access to it, or was there a certain moment in your life where this started to pique your interest?
Well, I think it piqued my interest from the time that I was a kid. I was very curious. I would ask my parents, well, where am I from? I would ask her, so where does this come from? Where does this come from? So I had a curiosity about who I was, and partly because when we immigrated to Canada, I immigrated when I was 3. We were the only Black kids in the schools that we were going to in Montreal and here in Toronto. And there was this sense of, not feeling like one belonged. They would show films about Africa, and people would sort of turn their heads and look at you to sort of make connections or whatever. And I had no connections with the films of people in Africa because that's not how I grew up. So this curiosity, I think, has always been with me. And the reluctance that my parents had to sharing those stories from home kind of made the curiosity even more acute. It really came to be important in my work, I guess, probably in my 20s, when I was coming up as a young Black artist and trying to define myself. There was a lot of pushback from mainstream community, the mainstream theater artist community around sort of denigrating identity work, and the work that I often took on, because these were the theater companies that were hiring. were projects that had to do with anti-racism or feminist theater that integrated stories from outside of white culture. But that was really sort of boxed into this less than kind of category of performance. And then there were a bunch of us that were coming up, and we would fight the powers that be and say, no, our stories are important too. I was co-running a theater company at Nightwood Theater here in Toronto, and I was part of the PACT board. I was representing small theaters on the PACT board, and so I had some influence. But there were a lot of conversations about diversity. And that was like over 35 years ago or whatever. But it was really frustrating because those conversations weren't fruitful. And so you'd spend your energy giving up all of this valuable information about why my culture is important and why my stories are important. But then it would just sort of, I felt like it was just going nowhere. So I decided to turn that energy into understanding my own traditions.
This, I think, was one of the reasons that brought you to develop Arrivals,
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
So can you explain it to somebody who has never heard about Arrivals, what it is? I mean, I've worked with you now like since 2017, and still I have a hard time describing it well because it is so rich.
We carry a legacy. We carry it in our breath and in our bones. It unconsciously guides our gestures, our feet, the paths we travel. There is no bypassing loss. Loss of language, culture, dance, songs, history, memory, home. Yet everything we need to draw on is stored in our bodies. Together we walk a journey, dragging our roots on the ocean floor. And here we arrive with roots and shoots and other tools of knowing. The present moment meets the ancient lineage of eras within. We meet the stories under our skin, mingled in our blood, buried in our bones and breath, and follow the steps that lead us home. The project is called the Arrivals Legacy Project, and it started off as a workshop, and it was called the Arrivals Personal Legacy Workshop, and the idea was that we would invite artists to embody an ancestor 3 generations away, 2-3 generations away, and to find a compelling moment in that ancestor's life, and to embody that moment without going through the whole blah, blah, blah of storytelling. So they would do the research. Artists do the deep research into their ancestral subject, looking in archival and historical documents, but also interviewing family members that may have known them. And we also like to invite artists to work with an ancestor that they don't know, but somebody who piques their curiosity. Usually I say, somebody probably popped into your head. Like as you're listening to this interview now, somebody may have popped into your head or your heart.
Okay, and what about people who have like no access, right? Because they don't have, maybe all their family members have died, or maybe they are adopted, or like, how can they benefit from this work?
Yeah, well, I myself didn't know my grandfather, and I chose my grandfather because he died when my father was 2. And so when I put myself through the process, I started to investigate him based on the little bits of information that I could glean from family. So let me go back a bit. So in describing the process, there are 6 stages to the process. The first stage is the call, what we call the call. And people find an ancestor, choose an ancestor. And I was speaking before about this ancestor that may pop into your mind, into your heart. We ask artists to choose, or participants that take the workshop, we ask them to choose somebody that they don't really know. And then we go through a training phase where we start to wake up these memories that are in our bodies. And this is the basic understanding of the work, the underpinning philosophy of the work is that there are these memories that are in our bodies, and that waking them up, shaking them up, paying attention to them, being witness to them, bearing witness to these memories that exist in our bodies, brings them up further. Now science, modern science, has caught up with indigenous ways of knowing with their brand new science called epigenetics, which is now scientists are saying, okay, there are things that we inherit from our ancestors, from those that came before us, and that these memories or these stories, they don't call it memory or story, they call it DNA strands or whatever, or markers, are found in the body. And what we speak of from our indigenous cultures is this idea that there are these stories, that there are these memories, that there are these residues that travel through time and land in us. In some cultural contexts, this is a very important thing. When babies are born, they are taken and named after an ancestor, a particular ancestor, and attributed to that line of ancestry. And now, in North America, we've lost some of those traditions and rites of passage that connect us with those that have gone before us. And so the process really invites people to re-engage with those memories, those stories, those histories that already exist in us and sometimes cause disease or cause discomfort in people, patterns, that we might inherit from our family members. So the process kind of allows us to look at those stories and fragments as artists. We're able to take those fragments and really examine them through the process of creation, and bring some of those stories that our ancestors may not have been able to tell in their time forward. And so it just creates this river of experience back to the past and moving towards the future.
So you do this workshop with artists, and maybe that's also where it originated, because you are an artist and you work in this field, but you are also, as you mentioned before, maybe also not always voluntarily an educator, and you are an academic, right? Now you brought that in a whole other sphere. So can you share a little bit about your work, because you're doing your PhD at the moment at Concordia, and it is also connected to Arrival. So how do you merge these two worlds? And also, since I have been honored to work alongside you a little bit this year, I saw you going into different contexts and with different universities, talking to scholars from different fields, mostly in connection to art, but not always. So maybe can you loop us in how it also is beneficial in that, in that field?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's been really exciting about the work is that it, when we talk about artists, we think of artists in the sense of, okay, you've gone to school and you've become an artist and such. That's the Western tradition. But in many cultures, artists are also, bankers and farmers, and and that the sense of being an artist is a lot more full-bodied than just I do this art practice and that is my job. That the need to tell story, the need to find story, the need to make connection through story, and I say story in that broad sense because it's gesture, it's dance, it's movement, it's painting, it's that need exists in all of us. And so when I offer the process in a non-arts context, it's about tapping into that humanity and that sense of, who am I? We start from our feet. We always start from our feet. I started this work actually when I was teaching an intro to acting class, and I was working with artists or young aspiring artists, theater artists who were coming from different disciplines. Everybody had to take the intro to acting course. So you had designers, you had theater studies majors, technicians, and I wanted to create an exercise that would be an equal playing ground for them. That they didn't have to think about embodying a character that was outside of them, but that they would find it within themselves. Mm-hmm. I really got to hear the impact of the work, not just about learning how to act, but what it meant for their lives. The fact that they chose an ancestor that was going through the same thing that they're going through right now, yes. Even though, there
are hundreds of years apart, maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm gonna wave in a question that we have been asking everyone in this season is, what are you reading at the moment? What's on your bookshelf? I know one of your favorite authors, but I wonder what is currently the book that you're reading.
You know who has really captured me, and she makes my head spin, is Sylvia Wynter, who's a Jamaican scholar, incredible mind, but so hard to read and decipher. And when you get through, you read a paragraph and you read it about 10 times and then you get it. You say, oh my goodness, wow, that the depth of what she's talking about.
What empowers you?
I think there's something about knowing and not knowing. There's something about, there was a period of time when I felt like I don't know enough, and so I would feel silenced by that, not knowing enough, because I felt like if I didn't really know things, then I couldn't really speak to them, and that like I couldn't speak to them with the authority that I needed to speak to them. And I think that sort of links to what I was talking about near the beginning, because there was that pressure to be the educator, to be, you had this one moment to say what you needed to say, and they were listening for that moment, and you say it, and you speak from the heart, and you say as much as you can, and you stumble, and and then you walk away thinking, oh, I wish I had said that, or I wish I had explained that further, because there's just so few windows to be able to have the conversations that need to be had. They open a crack in the door, and you say, okay, now I can say what I need to say, and then they go away and they go, oh, interesting, okay, well, let's move on to the real art or whatever.
Oh, it's so terrible.
So there was that point. And then when I started to turn my energies not into educating them, but into educating myself, into educating the people around me who were also trying to find their feet and trying to find their own voices. It changed everything. So this sense of not knowing was actually an empowering place to be. So we step into the unknowing together. We explore this space of what if, what's next, and what happened, and how is that connected to me, and this whole unraveling, which is so generative. And it's not about closing down, and trying to fit through little crack in the door, but it's about this whole world that's available to us that we have been neglecting, or I had been neglecting, because I was forced to face in one direction. So I think this sense right now, I really enjoy not knowing. And I really enjoy that unraveling process of trying to know, seeking for knowledge, like seeking and seeking together in a village. We talk about the village.
Yes. So you said the work is bigger than you, and I want to leave this space and this city and go back to Vancouver, where you worked with this company and founded the company Urban Inc.
No, it was founded by Marie Clements, and I was the second artistic director.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about that work, and also about your arrivals work in Vancouver, because you work there a lot. And if I'm correct, then you work with a lot of Indigenous artists over there as well, which I find a very beautiful intersection that I don't see enough. So.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because the arrivals work started right before I went to Urban Inc. To take over Urban Inc. And in fact, my first partner in the work, Heather Hermont, she and I and Lopa Sirkar, we went to Galiano Island, which was where the company was based at the time. We went into residency, and so Marie had invited me out, and I brought Heather, and Lopa was living in Vancouver, so I brought her to Galiano Island, and we spent some time just at a residency house called Fathom Labs, and little did I know, but Marie had invited me out to pitch the idea that I would take over the company. It just descended on me all of a sudden. No, this is the right thing to do, that I need to take this job. And I wanted to work with Indigenous and racialized artists, and to just, offer these workshops as a way to experiment with this form that was emerging. And that sort of need to know more about my own history, my own sense of home, was, I guess, fed by the fact that I was running an organization, an Indigenous organization, where home and territory was so much a part of that.
How would you describe accessibility, like, in general, people, your work, I'm sure that is a topic too, how to make it accessible, and what is going well and what still needs to be done.
Yeah, well, right now, there are questions about accessibility, especially because even the language I use in terms of embodied practice and working with, I speak about working with our feet, and we there's lots of things that I think I need to start to explore and to investigate with all kinds of bodies that arrive in the space. And this came up in a conversation a few days ago, as I was trying to describe the work. We're going through a process of finding the language now to sort of create our vision, mission, mandate, and language that I took for granted. Now I have to really think through, what does that mean in this context? And what does it mean to actually to have a process that is accessible beyond what I even would imagine, you know? So it's a good question, you know, to think about the future of the work and its present reality in a context that incorporates the fullest diversity of participation.
Can you tell us what you're working on right now? And you're also a director, so I know you're working on a beautiful piece. What is it about? Where can we see it? When can we see it?
Yeah, well, I've got a few projects on the go.
Bring it on!
One is called Diaspora Kids.
Oh, I've heard about that.
Yeah, no, it's been a joy working with you and the collective. Diaspora Kids is a beautiful, beautiful project that was born, of course, from your initiative, coming out of the Arrivals work to want to grow this work in yourself, but also with a community of artists. So there are incredible women from Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, who are all working together to collaborate on a piece that no one knows yet.
That's right.
But really digging into process. And it's really, really been a beautiful experience to help to usher that process. Yeah. And then Art of Peace, Arrival, is a work that I'm working on with one of my directing partners, Jerry Trentham, produced by Pounds Per Square Inch. And we're working with 5 dancers from, again, across the country to also develop this really beautiful process of exploring history, space, time, legacy, context together. And so we've been working over the past couple of years, and that project we'll have a showing actually on the 15th of December. So we'll be able to, that'll be online. And then the major production I'm doing is called Black and Blue Matters, and that's Omari Newton's new play. And that's being produced by Black Theatre Workshop. And we're presenting at the Segal Centre in Montreal at the end of February, and at the National Arts Centre in March. In Ottawa. Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. So excited to see it. All the best for the rehearsals. Thank you so much for all the wisdom you shared with us today. I feel like we just touched the surface, and I didn't have the time to go deeper into everything, because then we would be sitting here all day. But I hope there will be a part 2 at some point in the future. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm going to talk to the audience for a little while. And while I do this, you can think about what you want to yell to everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the last episode of season 3 of this year 2021. Thank you for all your support. You've given us all the likes. Keep on bringing them on Instagram. Also, comments on YouTube are amazing. We want to also thank you to Ethiopia House, where we've been sitting today. Thank you for hosting us. And to the Goethe Institute for your support. And also to the Bell Foundation. And at this point, I also want to say thank you for today. It's Jill, who is behind the scenes, Jillian Harris, supporting and doing sound and camera and everything. But also to my incredible team in Germany, and that is Jatri Niehaus, Karol Yachtmann, and Jörg Stepczynski, who behind the scenes are like doing all the editing and the rough cuts and the research and like a lot of uploading and downloading and stuff. So thank you for being with me up to season 3 and episode 16. Lots of love to you all. I wish you the best for the new year, and hope we'll see each other soon. Bye. Oh, there was one more thing. I want to give it back to my beautiful guest today, Diane Roberts. And you are the one who is going to end this beautiful episode with whatever you want to yell and leave with the audience.
My yell is a song.
Okay.
Oh, below. Oh, below. Oh, below. Below, 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 below. Oh, low, oh, below. Below is heart, go. Heart, go. So that's what I want to say. Let your heart go. And the last part of the song is about opening doors.
This is so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do it one more time? Jill, you gotta join in.
Oh, below. Oh, below. Oh, below. Below, 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 below. Elo, elo. Oh, below. Below, 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 below. Elo, elo. Thank you.
Oh,
That was beautiful.
this is so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, and thank you, Jill.
Thank you.